Facts First presents. You may be surprised by what 1950s women saw as perfect husband material. Okay, before we get into this, before you watch the video, men, drop down to the comments and let us know if you think that maybe you would be good husband material for 1950s wives. And then watch the video. Let's see how well you do. Also, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. When it comes to choosing a life partner, American women do not hesitate to state precisely what they want in a man. Now, this is not a recent development. Even in the 1950s, women had clear ideas of what they wanted in their man. Well, we have some traits that American women saw as desirable qualities in men at the time. In the 1950s, most women had an average height of 5 feet 2 inches. Now, we all know that it's very common for people, men and women, to crave what they don't have. Since most women were not very tall at the time, 1950s women wanted tall men. In fact, most women at the time set an exact number of the height specifications. The ideal man had to be at least 6 feet tall. Apparently, the idea of dark men as the right candidates did not apply in the 1950s. In those days, most women preferred men with blue eyes, and this is an indication that fair men were preferred to dark men in the 1950s. Apparently, 1950s women wanted their men to be strong and masculine, too. In those days, being sporty was a big plus because women were attracted to men who also happened to be avid sportsmen. A particular sport may not matter that much, but there are indications that the 1950s women preferred men who played football, baseball, or basketball. In the 1950s, most women were full-time housewives, and that meant the wife had a full-time job running the home and taking care of the kids. For all of that, women preferred men who did have some domestic tendencies to go with their masculinity. A man who had a tendency to help his wife with some of the household chores was the ideal man in the 1950s. Also in the 50s, the married women did not have a job, usually, full-time or part-time, and they didn't run a business. Since the husband was usually the sole breadwinner of the family, it followed that sensible women wanted men who had a steady job. That's important because a man who cannot adequately provide for his family is not likely to make an excellent husband. Generosity was also an attractive quality in a man. That's true about today's men, too, and it was true in the 50s. In those days, women considered stingy men unattractive, and they went for men who were generous with their money and time. One thing most women look for in a man is the ability to listen. That's never really changed. A man who's attentive and considerate is likely to make an excellent husband. Back in the 1950s, women looked for men who would listen to them and value their opinions. Yep, nothing much has changed in this regard. Today's women value men who are attentive to them and seek their opinions on a variety of issues. Women want the right blend of trust, affection, and respect from their men as well. In addition, most women do not want men to treat them as another possession like cars or furniture. For this reason, a man who is overly possessive and domineering is a huge turnoff to most women. The women in the 50s preferred men who trusted their women and gave them a bit of leeway. Kind of like today. In the 1950s, people got married relatively early. Of course, husbands were usually older than their wives at the time, and now while the men could afford to postpone marriage and get away with it, most women were conscious of their biological clocks. So that's why in the 1950s, women set precise marriage ages for themselves and even their future husbands. For men, the ideal age from a woman's perspective was 23. In addition to the other qualities I've already listed, a 23-year-old man in the 1950s was simply irresistible. A well-read man is an attractive man any day. That's because reading makes you smarter. It improves your mind. It broadens your horizons. A well-read man is civilized, tolerant, and easy to live with in most cases. The women in the 1950s, they knew all these things, and that's why they preferred well-read men as life partners. A good-looking man is usually hard to resist. Now, combine the good looks with height, style, and intelligence, and you have the complete package. Back in the 50s, many women wanted to marry good-looking men, and the standards at the time were Rock Hudson and Elvis Presley. But you can't really blame them because if you snag a handsome man, you're likely to have handsome sons and beautiful daughters. A real gentleman is one who is polite, considerate, and thoughtful. A rude and unrefined man is a definite no-no in the 50s and today. Most women at the time looked for men who ticked all the right boxes in the manners department, and you can't really blame them. When it comes to choosing a right man, nobody can accuse the 50s women of being outdated or ignorant. These women were way ahead of their time because they knew what a real man ought to be. A lot of things that we look for today in a man. Even in this current age, you'll do well to go with most of the qualities on this list. So how about you, men? How did you stack up to a perfect husband from the 1950s? Tell us in the comments. Hey, and ladies, how does your man measure up? Let us know about him. And subscribe for more.